Welcome to Combat Zone with Ben the Bane Davis on Stadium.
Folks, welcome back to Combat Zone. I'm your host, Ben the Bane Davis. Today's episode, we have the former Bellator Light Heavyweight Champion, Phil Davis, turned PFL superstar. But before we get to our interview with Phil, a couple big topics we got to bust out. First of which, there was no UFC this weekend. It was a quieter weekend in the realm of combat sports, but there was plenty of regional action to keep you occupied. One specific highlight, my guy Ryan Cafaro winning the CFFC Featherweight Championship. He's competing since 2009. This was his biggest moment to date. Only 2% of people on Tapology picked my man Ryan to win, so congrats to you and new. If you're curious about what I was up to this weekend, I was commentating 559 fights in Visalia, California with former UFC title challenger Joe Soto. Interesting card. I love regional MMA. I hope you do as well. It's the backbone of this industry. And after events, right, you always go out with the production team. You always like to have a good time, get a few adult beverages maybe. And while we were out in the town, a couple members of the team had come up and they were like, hey, listen, watch out for gang activity here in Visalia. There's a lot of active criminal gangs, which I was wearing my turtleneck blazer and my gold shoes. So if there was any target at that bar for gang activity, it might have been yours truly. But thankfully, we got out unscathed. All right, let's take it to some of our big hits today. First and foremost, the bantamweight champion, Merab Dvalishvili, 2 weeks out from his UFC 316 main event with Sean O'Malley, the big rematch with Sugar Sean. It seems like he breaks his toe. I don't know if you've seen this viral video. We'll toss it up, but it's Merab with a absolutely destroyed pinky toe. And if you remember from last year, that's what forced Conor McGregor out of his UFC 303 main event. But seems like it's not going to be affecting Merab. He's assuring us that it doesn't matter. If he has to, he'll cut it off, which I think cutting off the pinky toe might be a bit worse than just rolling with it. But his head coach, John Wood, also chimed in and reinforced this notion, stating that, listen, Merab has had worse. He's had broken ribs. His back's been completely out of whack ahead of fights, but that's just the way it goes. And I agree. I mean, we hear about this quite frequently. No fighter steps into the cage or ring 100% healthy. That's just kind of a given. But broken ribs, broken toe, messed up back, those are kind of big things. Those are kind of big things, Team Merab. But either way, we'll see how much it affects him. UFC 316, 2 weeks out. Now, last week, we mentioned Jon Jones. We talked about the situation that he was having with Tom Aspinall. I believe since our chat about Jon, there was more viral videos from Phuket, Thailand that have emerged. He's frolicking around in the pool with dozens of his other buddies, clearly not at all training or focused on a fight camp. So much so, in fact, that it's caused the fan base to create a viral petition to get him to be stripped. Check this out. 77,000 signatures on change.org demanding that Dana White pull the belt off of him. Now, Jon Jones obviously saw this, 77,000 signatures. Of course, it would reach the enlightened eyes of the heavyweight champion. And his response was only 5 words. He says, the equivalent to picograms. Now, if you remember, there was a whole picogram scandal several years back, which caused him to be stripped and have some more career stagnation and fragmentation with USADA. And it's a little bit interesting, to me at least, that his response to this viral petition, which has 77,000 signatures. Guys, if we put 77,000 people in the same room, it would fill up an NFL stadium, right? This isn't exactly a dismissible percentage or fraction of people, right? It's kind of a big number. And so for Jon to just be incredibly dismissive and go as far as making a joke about his PED failure test, which that was a whole other scandal again years back, is just how on brand for the heavyweight champion to reference his drug test failures and dismissing this viral petition. But either way, I mean, Jon's thoughts on it are one thing, but Dana White's are a whole other one, right? Some would say that that's more important. The UFC's CEO, the president, the head honcho. And there was a viral clip that emerged after UFC 167 where Dana White was talking about George St. Pierre. GSP notably beat Johnny Hendricks that night and said that before rushing to face another challenger or another big opponent, he wants to take a little bit of time off. He wants a little bit of a break. Dana's response in the post-fight press conference about that is vicious. Vicious. He tears GSP apart. Absolutely lambasts him in front of the media, saying this isn't a business where you get breaks. You owe it to the fans. You owe it to Johnny Hendricks. You owe it to everybody to keep fighting ASAP as soon as possible. And it's just pretty interesting how the tone has changed, right? And his feelings have completely flipped. And in a seemingly much worse and dire scenario, Dana isn't applying that same energy to Johnny Bones Jones. Kind of what we expected. All right, last one before we get to our guy, Phil Davis. This was something that I'd unfortunately found myself in, and I have to apologize. I think that misinformation in Big 2025 is terrible. I think lying online is one of the worst things you can do, and it's exactly what I did earlier this week. I made a viral Twitter post lying. So here's what happened. I see this video of a restaurant employee KOing a violent customer. It was a customer that had rushed at this employee, pushed him over, and the employee hits this beautiful bob weave and then rips him with a right hand, and down goes the customer. It was a very funny video. And so I obviously take it and put a different label on it. I said that it was Dustin Poirier's cousin, Glenn, that KO'd this violent restaurant customer. And then that unfortunately gained quite some attention. 7 million views and 125,000 likes later. And now Glenn Poirier is just a figmentation of my mind that I have misinformed the masses about, but he's become his own machine. Glenn Poirier then was picked up by many other larger recycling machine accounts, all attracted to this story because they had no reason to question it, right? Why would you? It's the internet. Everything's true on the internet. On Twitter, it's all fact. And so I saw not one, not two, but many of these large accounts reposting the same thing, same caption. Dustin Poirier's cousin, Glenn Poirier, notching a big KO at his restaurant job. Glenn Poirier, the cousin of the Diamond, getting it done in one at his regular 9 to 5. And I initially was a little bit, ooh, is this bad? I'm spreading a Glenn revolution here. But I didn't think too much of it. Glenn Poirier, this is taking on a life of its own. I'm very happy to see it. Every single one of these stupid accounts that posts it, I would say highlights a problem with news in our world, right? If I can just manifest Glenn Poirier and then everyone's spreading it, is he really fake at that point? Or is he actually Dustin Poirier's cousin? Have we invented him? Time will tell. We'll see. But I wanted to publicly apologize for this lie that I've started, and this cousin of former interim champion Dustin Poirier that doesn't exist. But I will say this. Last thought on it. He might have a cousin named Glenn. In fact, Dustin's middle name is Glenn. That's what kind of inspired that thought. Dustin Glenn Poirier. So maybe there's a Glenn inside the family. And who knows? Maybe it was actually Glenn Poirier in the video, and we've had a cosmic alignment and a hell of a coincidence. But either way, we'll have to see. All right, let's take it to the main man, the former Bellator light heavyweight champion. He just scored a massive knockout in his first PFL appearance over Rob Wilkinson to advance in the light heavyweight tournament. Let's take it to him. Phil Davis, how are you, sir? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Combat Zone. True honor and pleasure to have the UFC veteran and former Bellator light heavyweight champion. He's back in action on June 27th in the PFL Light Heavyweight semifinals. Phil Davis, how are you, sir?
Doing so good.
Fantastic, man. Let's break down that thunderous debut you had over former PFL champ Rob Wilkinson. Found that second round finish, your first TKO since 2019. How good did you feel in there that night?
I felt good. Felt good. More than anything, I had a much longer layoff than I really wanted to. So I was just excited to be back in the cage and doing my thing.
Was there anything that Rob Wilkinson presented you with that night that surprised you, or was it about as advertised from the former PFL champ?
Yeah, I would say about as advertised. He was tough. It's hard to, excuse me, it's hard to explain to people, when you see a finish, you're like, oh wow, this guy is, much better than that guy. Not necessarily. I was just able to execute a technique, and land at in a critical place at the right time.
Yeah.
It's not exactly like this guy's way better than that guy. No, I got the win. I won't deny myself that, but it was just a matter of timing and placement, and he's a super tough guy. I think he's I don't take anything away from him. I think I was accurate about him. He's a dangerous fighter. Really good game. And power in both hands. He brings a strong game. But yeah, he approached the fight pretty much how I expected.
Yeah. And notably, right, first man to finish him since Israel Adesanya did, I believe, in 2018. So speaks to your point about that toughness and durability that Rob has.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
Next up is Sullivan Colley on June 27th. And this is an interesting one because it's almost the reversal of a guy like Rob Wilkinson, right? Sullivan's a youngster in the game, up and coming, wanting to make the mark against the true legend like yourself. What do you make of him?
I mean, you just put it together, contextualize the fight in a way that I don't think. I think that's it. He's an up and comer, all around solid background, wrestling background. Um, and he's really just now starting to enter into those big fights with big name guys. And this is kind of the proving grounds for what will be, the beginning of a glorious career for
Yeah, I love it. Short and sweet. Short and sweet.
him.
When you look on the other side of that bracket, it features Simeon Powell and Antonio Carlos Jr. Who wins that fight? Who's better in that matchup?
uh, I want to go say Antonio Carlos Jr. But Simeon Powell, he's crafty. He's
Yeah.
crafty. He's um definitely he surprised me in his first fight. I thought he was going to lose that fight, but he was very, very slick and very composed throughout the fight. Um, you know, what's his name? Albertson. He's a tough fighter. He's
Mm.
solid. He's one of those cats that you would love to coach because he covers all the bases.
Yeah.
He's solid technique. He's very fit. He eats clean. He works out hard. He covers all the bases. And he's just super tough. And yeah, Simeon Powell was able to get past him. So yeah, no, he has some craftiness to him. I think he has some real X factor. That and what I mean by X factor, it's just one of those things that you just can't quite quantify till you're in there. It's like,
Mm.
how did you pull that win out? He has a little bit more of that than I originally gave him credit for.
Fair. Great way to summarize it. Yeah, the vision that he has is truly, truly different. I'm curious, right? You talked about the layoff and how this is finally great to get back into the swing of things. What would winning the PFL tournament mean for someone in your position, having such a decorated career, having checked so many boxes?
Mm-hmm.
What would this accomplishment signify to you?
No, I'm moving right along. Everywhere I go, I leave my mark. Everywhere I go, I leave my mark. When I got into Bellator, it was, all right, well, let's see how you do against our guys here at Bellator.
Mhm.
And right away, first fight in, I'm going against a former champion, very crafty guy. Again, you gotta put your foot down hard when you go into a new organization, or you go into a new fight gym, or nah, they're gonna test you. They're gonna give you a rough go of it if they can make it tough for you. So expect that, and I think the winning the PFL tournament will just be proof that I am succeeding through multiple organizations, and just kind of cement my legacy as a Good fight.
Yeah. Different era, same Phil
Yeah,
Davis, same
there you
success,
go.
you know? I'm curious. I want to change the gears back to Bellator 297. It was the, split decision to Corey Anderson,
Yep.
2023. Was there any thought about potential retirement? Has that conversation ever happened internally for you?
Not for me.
Yeah.
No, no, it's never. It's not been the thought for me as of yet. Um, there was a little break between Corey Anderson fight um, and my last fight. Just excuse me, Bellator was winding down,
Mhm.
and PFL was kind of finalizing their purchasing. So it just poor timing and out of position, and it's never
Yeah.
good to move into a new organization on a loss. So
Yeah. And please go into as little or as much detail as you want. But during that transition period, right, it seemed like kind of a wild, wild west for a lot of guys.
mhm.
What was the communication like? Did you feel like certainty in that stage, or was there just a ton of things up in the air?
um, I would say uncertainty would
Sure.
categorize it best. The communication wasn't best. And here's the thing, I maybe too much, but I kind of rested on the fact that I'm sort of a name guy, and
Yeah.
if possible, I imagine they would have liked to keep me on board. Um, uh, you know, it was a little tricky, but you know, I think all parties involved did their best to try to make sure that fighters felt appreciated. Uh, Maybe a little more could have been done, but you know,
It's kind of a tricky
this is
thing,
business. It
right?
has to be
Yeah,
give and take. It
exactly.
has to be give and take.
Not everybody's going to get exactly what they want, unfortunately.
Exactly, exactly.
Folks, can't wait for more from Phil Davis later in today's episode. We've got more coming at you in the sense of news. Ilia Topuria leaving his longtime head coaches, bit of a preview for Glory 100 next month, and some chat about this weekend's UFC main event. Aaron Blanchfield and Macy Barber. Make sure you stay tuned here on the Combat Zone. Welcome back to the Combat Zone. Can't wait for more from former Bellator Light Heavyweight champion turned PFL superstar Phil Davis later in today's episode. But we got to take a quick break to discuss something important. It's Ilia Topuria. Now, obviously, because Jack Della Maddalena beat Bilal Muhammad in his UFC championship opportunity, we are forced in a scenario where Charles do Bronx Oliveira must headline against Ilia Topuria for the vacant lightweight championship as Islam heads up to 170. Now, with this big, career peak moment for Ilia Topuria, I think a lot of fans would probably think that, hey, keep doing what you were doing. What got you to the dance, don't change anything up, right? Instead, Ilia hits everybody with a curveball and leaves his longtime head coach, Jorge and Agustin Clement. They've been in Topuria's corner since the amateur days, helping him prepare for that UFC featherweight championship, capturing knockout. And a little over a month before this lightweight championship opportunity, he disappears from them. Word breaks that El Matador splits from the Clement brothers. Now, I'll say this. It's all seemingly amicable, right? The head coaches have come out and said they support him, they love him to death, and this is just sort of what happens. Ilia Topuria is suggesting it was amicable as well, right? He's relocating to Madrid. It just wouldn't make sense, I suppose, to trade. But that has caused a lot of problems for fighters before. If we look at how coaching inconsistencies have plagued other people, you can look no further than Diego Sanchez and Josh Fabia, right? Josh Fabia, that absolute fraud from back in the day, ruined Diego Sanchez's career. How about Rashad Evans leaving Jackson Wink and then a pale imitation of what we saw from Rashad when he was with them? It's not a very strong idea historically to leave the gyms that built you up. And it's, caused some serious criticism from the combat sports world. Chael Sonnen, confused by it, said he can't do it. Daniel Cormier questioned it, doesn't think it's a good idea. Ray Longo who's coached several UFC champions before, including Merab Dvalishvili, says what a guy does in the end is what he always wanted to do in the beginning, suggesting that this is something Ilia Topuria has been angling for quite some time, or at least was in the back of his mind, which is kind of an insidious, I would say, implication there from Ray Longo, but it again speaks to how these very Hall of Fame caliber combat sports names feel about this switch up ahead of the biggest moment in your career. Why do this? Why do this? So we'll see if this move helps or hinders Ilia Topuria in a month's time against the Bronx. Let's take it to Glory 100, though. So Glory 100 has something great going on next month. It's their two-day, June 13th, June 14th extravaganza event, right? June 14th, headlined by 4 different title fights. Rico Verhoeven, the superstar, taking on Artem Vakatov, who you might think that name sounds familiar. And you'd be right. Artem fought on Dana White's Contender Series, got a first-round knockout, and chose not to take the contract. He said no deal to the UFC, and now headlines Glory 100, battling for the heavyweight championship against Rico. Seemingly better opportunity, probably financially better, career-wise better. He can always return to the UFC for another Dana White Contender Series shot, or maybe get signed straight outright. But it's just very interesting that we see an instance of a fighter saying no to the big show. Will that spell anything going forward? Who knows? But either way, make sure you check it out. Mark your calendars. Glory 100, 4 title fights. We mentioned that top headliner. You've also got Tariq Khababez and Sergey Maslabajov. You know what? I'm going to stop trying to pronounce them. You go see and find it. Glory 100. Next month, I can't wait for it. All right. This weekend, we are back with some UFC action. Aaron Blanchfield and Macy Barber. This is a really interesting battle, I'd say, in a division that's seen some movement, right? Valentina Shevchenko beating Manon Fiorot, staying on top. But you've also got Natalia Silva, who just decisioned Alexa Grasso. These 2 females battling this weekend. I'd say it's heating up at the top of this division for Valentina's next challenger. But Aaron Blanchfield is a little concerned that Macy Barber's not going to show up. They were set to square off once before. Barber had to withdraw. And then most recently, Macy Barber withdrew from a fight with Rose Namajunas last year. I will say, in Macy's defense, there was a several-year stretch where she didn't pull out of any fights. But Aaron Blanchfield suggesting, hey, who knows? Until that ring door gets shut, this fight might not be official, right? And for a girl like Aaron Blanchfield, some hot words, some steam, some venom, some fangs from Blanchfield, who's headlined several times before. I'm curious to see what she brings in against Barber, because I think stylistically, this is a pretty solid opportunity for Aaron Blanchfield. And fun fact about her before we take it to some highlights from the world of combat sports, she at one point went undefeated for 1,800 days. She lost to Tracy Cortez in February 2019 and then did not lose again until that main event against Manon Fiorot in March of last year. So, you know, this is a person who's used to getting their hand raised. And I think, quick preview before we get to the bets later, I think she's going to do it again this weekend. But let's take it to some highlights from the world around combat sports, some slap fight, maybe some card jitsu. What do we got cooking? Let's take it to it.
happen. I mean, Bunyan's still not out of it. Finally looking to put this guy
Folks, welcome back to the Combat Zone. We get to hear more from former Bellator Light Heavyweight Champion Phil Davis right now. Let's take it back to the PFL superstar. Phil, let's keep it going. Okay, I want to change gears to a question regarding the 33 pro bouts that you've had. You have never been stopped. What's the key to this durability? Even in those hard moments, the adversity inside the cage, you have never wilted to any of your opponents, which is beyond impressive.
What's the key? It's simple. It's simple. I start with a good skincare routine, okay? The skincare routine is going to take you to the next level. You got good skincare, you don't get cut. You don't get cut, the doctor doesn't come into the cage. That's step one, okay? No, it's all about limiting damage down from throughout the course of your career. Just limiting damage. I was always good at taking people down. Yeah. And so I did. Now, it's not to say I couldn't have stood up and kickbox or box more with people before, as of late, but why if they can't stop a takedown?
Yeah.
And I think it's just done wonders for my overall longevity, just taking people down, beating them up. So yeah, there you go.
Sports,
George St. Pierre, okay, similar style in that he'll take you down and he will beat you up. And that guy, I truly believe he could still fight this day. I think George St. Pierre can still take on a tough fighter.
I love it. And listen, path of least resistance, it's a sport. Sport is defined by winning. You are by the constraints of the sandbox you're in, so I get it. I am curious, though, has there been a singular moment or opponent where you could say, man, that is the hardest hitter I've ever faced?
Ooh, probably the hardest hitter didn't really land like they. I would say it's probably a toss-up between a couple of guys. I would say Joe Romero. He's top of my list. But it was always I was never going to let him land. You just cannot let him land.
Yeah,
you can't. You have to be right. You have to have your angles. A lot of guys, they come in very linear, and I prefer to take good angles. Especially with stronger, faster, powerful fighters. You're not always going to see that punch. If you're at a safe angle, you stand a chance. If you're at a bad angle, it doesn't matter if you see it coming or not. So I will put him on that list. I will put Anthony Johnson on that list. I will put Glover Teixeira on that list. I will put Corey Anderson on that list. Oh, almost forgot about Nemkov. Yeah, Vadim Nemkov. See, that's how good he is. I forgot that he's on the list. he's tough. I'd say that rounds out my top five.
Around that list. And I think what's funny is, especially at that weight class, a lot of people are heavy hitters, right? One good
Absolutely.
punch from a 205er, right? You're
Absolutely.
probably done.
Absolutely, yeah. When people are like, oh, well, who hits the hardest? Well, I mean, it's really kind of
all of them.
whose punch am I willing? I'm not willing to take none of their punches, right?
Yeah.
Not willfully. It's an accident when it happens.
Man, we've been dissecting the present. Phil, I want to take you back to the past. 4-year team captain at Harrisburg High School. I'm curious, what were the keys to being a locker room leader?
I just always I was always a lead by example type person. I was always at practice. I was always if there were things to do, I was always the one doing them. And so it motivates the other guys, even when they're not sure what wrestling is or how to do it. They're like, man, well, I'll just do what Phil does. I'll just do what he does. And that's good enough. If you really want to motivate people, just let them know where to be, what to do, and be there and do it with them.
Yeah. Show up first, leave last, be in the trenches with the guys. Fair enough. I'm curious, at that age, right, 15 to 18, what were some of your life goals? What did you envision your life looking like at that point in your life?
I think most of my goals at that age were fairly superficial. Oh, I want to have a nice car. I want to have this. Nothing in terms of like directional. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't know really how I would get there. It was really just kind of I don't want to say flying by the seat of my pants, but just letting life take me. I was, I guess, resolved to do well in school, and that's all right. And that's all right. When you can get those steps correct, life can just unfold and tell you what's going to happen.
Yeah. It'll be how it's meant to be,
It'll be how it's meant to be.
I love it. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about fighter pay these days. As someone who's been competing professionally since 2008, has spent lengthy periods in the UFC, Bellator, now in PFL, I'm curious, what is your 2 cents on fighter pay? How have you seen it evolve and develop since, the late 2000s?
Well, it has come a long way. Fighter pay has definitely come a long way, but it has so much more room to go. In other professional sports leagues, the revenue share is something like 50% to the athletes and 50% to the organization. In MMA, at its best, it is 20%, and that just cannot be. We're putting our lives on the line. We have the most unprotected contact sport there is. You just cannot simply, reward those people who are putting their lives on the line with 20% of the revenue.
Yeah.
That's not reasonable.
What is the solution in some ways? Because I know that there's been unionization attempts that have not worked out in the past. Obviously, there was a big class action recently that was trying to compensate for some back pay. But it doesn't seem like this is a nut that anyone's been able to crack effectively.
I don't want to be a person that complains without providing solutions.
Sure.
But I don't want to, I don't.
It's a tough solution to provide. So there go. It's like, why?
Right. I also don't want to act like I have it all figured out,
Right.
Unionization probably is not the answer. The MMA fighters are independent contractors. I'm pretty sure it's not legal for independent contractors to form a union. So that's number one. And that's sort of why it has failed in the past. If you look at other sports leagues, NFL, NBA, those gentlemen are employees. They are paid They are paid by their franchise, their respective franchise. Weekly or however monthly, but they are, and I know in the NFL it is weekly. Every Friday you get paid. Like, and so you're not a 1099 employee like we are. We MMA fighters are all 1099. So it's vastly different. But I think what really needs to happen is collectively fighters need to advocate for each other. There's too much noise in the space where this guy, for whatever reason, is just ripping on this guy. Look, I don't like you. We are going to fight, but hey, I hope you make good money, brother. Okay? I hope you make more than what you're making. We need to advocate for each other. There has to be a separation between the nonsense that helps promote a fight and the real life that is holding each of us back from reaching our top potential, right? In mixed martial arts, our cap is the organization that they decide what they will allow us to make. In boxing, the cap on which you can make is the market, right? Mayweather can make Mayweather dollars because the market justifies it. Whoever buys his fight justifies his pay. That is it. It doesn't matter how many pay-per-view buys you have in MMA, you have a cap.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, if we're going to change one thing, you got to change the thing right before it, and then the thing right before it, and then it's a whole, it's a systemic.
Yeah.
I love it. It's probably the worst thing about MMA. If only the GFL could have solved it. Now, they'll be back. All right. Phil, last one I got for you. You own a Wheaties box with Hale Sanderson, I believe, on the front. What's the significance of that Wheaties box to you, man?
I think it's important to always have heroes and not to be ashamed of that. When I was coming out, Hale Sanderson was in college, and he won 159 collegiate matches, 4 national titles while never losing. Incredible. There's been guys who have won 4 national titles, but they have lost throughout the season. He just had a perfectly unblemished record from start to finish, all throughout college, and that to me is very inspiring. Not even just the championships, but just in the pursuit of perfection. And truth be told, I don't know. I don't want to speak for Kel. But when he got done with that 4th national title and he retires from collegiate wrestling 159-0, he still hadn't fully scratched that itch. Now he's going on doing Olympic and world team trials, and he just wants to continue to add to that resume, just continue to push himself. And as an athlete, I see what that is. I can respect what goes into those decisions, into those goals, into the planning, obviously the execution, but to be so bold with yourself to acquire that of yourself, I just admire him so much.
Yeah. And I feel like it's interesting because the rarefied air of immaculate results, right? That's always what I think people are chasing, but they have the understanding perfection's impossible. Perfection can't be achieved. But I feel like seeing someone actually do it, you go, well, it is possible.
Right.
It's got to be motivating. Yeah.
Absolutely. You see what I'm saying?
I love it. Phil, last one I got for you, man. June 27th, the light heavyweight tournament semifinals. What happens against Sullivan Cauley?
It's what needs to happen. It's what needs to happen, bro. I gotta show up. I gotta perform, and I gotta perform at a level that is above what he has seen in his, would you say 8 fights, 9 fights?
I think 8 fights. Yeah, 7-1 overall.
Yeah. I have to perform at a level that he's not seen. I have to overwhelm him. I have to exhaust him. I have to bring him into deep waters where he's never been before.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Has he won a fight outside of the first round?
Let's see. I think he won in the second round. No, all first round finishes in his wins. He did have a second round win in his amateur career and then a third round victory in his amateur debut, but obviously relevance on those fights is long gone.
Relevance.
No disrespect,
Relevance.
but in his professional victories, yes, they are all first round stoppages. So
yeah, now he's in for if you're planning to fight me, you don't plan for a first round anything. You plan for a 3-round and you see what you get. And that's it's extremely difficult to walk into that headspace.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, Phil Davis, 4 weeks out. Best of luck with the remainder of the training camp. The former light heavyweight Bellator champion, now in the PFL tournament semifinals. Best of luck, sir. I can't wait to watch it, and we'll speak soon.
Will do. Thank you, guys.
Welcome back to Combat Zone. Massive thank you to Phil Davis for the time ahead of his June 27th showdown with Sullivan Colley. Still coming up next, we've got the Penny Parlay. Let's make some money. And some fighters who tried to win, but unfortunately, it simply wasn't their night. Up next on Combat Zone. Folks, welcome back. Let's figure out some lines that Bally Sportsbook offers and what you can make this weekend. Now, obviously, we don't have any past cash segments. There was no UFC card last weekend, so let's look ahead to Blanchfield and Barber. Now, if I was going to be constructing a parlay for this one, it would look as follows. I'd go Nascimento minus 180, Trevor Giles plus 132 to get the upset, Jordan Levitt minus 186, Oki at minus 180. Billy Ray Goff minus 375. Come on, that's chalky. That's as chalky as it gets. Ludwig Klein at plus 128. Dustin Jacoby minus 186. Zach Reese minus 175. And Aaron Blanchfield minus 235. So that's going to cook it out to a plus 74.96 parlay. If you put $10 on it, you're going to win about $759. Big wins here on Bally's. And you might have a couple questions about some of the picks in there, right? The one I want to defend to you is Ludwig Klein taking on Mateusz Gamrot and me selecting Klein. So Ludwig has 2 losses inside the UFC. Both of those came in the featherweight division. Since moving up to 155, he has been immaculate with wins over pretty decent talent in Mason Jones, Ignacio Bahamundes, and Thiago Moises. Ludwig Klein, he's just found a way to get it done against some pretty stellar competition. Mateusz Gamrot, someone who's always in the top 15, getting a little bit older, right? 34 years young, and coming off that split decision defeat to Dan Hooker. I don't know. I just don't really love what I've seen from Gamrot in his last 2 fights. If you remember the Rafael Dos Anjos fight, yes, unanimous decision victory for Gamrot, but he took some damage. It's not like he was swarming and overwhelming RDA on the feet. And I feel something in the water. I sense something that Ludwig Klein's momentum, this surge that he's found at 155, is going to lead to his biggest win today. Now, obviously, it's not like this is, would be a huge upset. He's plus 120, right? But it would certainly be something unexpected, I think, to the majority of fight fans. But either way, I'm putting him in the parlay. $10 wins you $759. I like it. You love it. Let's keep the action going. Some more content here on the Combat Zone. Not Your Night coming up next. Folks, thanks for tuning into this episode of Combat Zone. Got to hear from the co-main event on June 27th, Mr. Wonderful Phil Davis. Got to catch up on Ili Topuria, Merab Dvalishvili, and our favorite guy, John Jones. Make sure you take a peek at some of those Bally Sports book bets. Make some lines for this weekend's action. Aaron Blanchfield, Macy Barber. You do not want to miss it, and you simply can't miss this next episode of Combat Zone. 9 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday. We will see you in the next one.